Today's notes are Note 6-2, Different Forms of Linear Equations, Day 1. So we're going to start with looking at the top, look over these different forms of linear equations. To start with, we have standard form, which is ax plus by equals c. A, b, and c are integers, and if we need to, you can multiply by the denominator. So if there's a fraction, we can multiply by the denominator. A must be a positive number. So if needed, we would have to divide by -1, but I don't think that we will get into that in these notes. For slope-intercept, so this is what we're all very familiar with, y equals mx plus b. Remember, m is your slope and b is the y-intercept, and we're going to be solving for y, so that's a lot of what we will be doing today. And then lastly, point-slope form. M is still your slope, and x1 and y1 are points on the graph, or sorry, on the line. So it's going to be any point on the line you can use. So looking at number 1, it says convert each equation from standard form to slope-intercept form. Remember, slope-intercept form is just y equals mx plus b. M is your slope, b is your intercept. So looking at number 1, we're going to have to solve for y. So I'm taking it back to the beginning of the year when we did Don't Call Me After Midnight. So make sure you have that somewhere on your notes. And we're actually solving for y here because in slope-intercept form, y is over there by itself. So that's what we're going to do here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to box -3y because that's the first thing that I need to get by itself. So going through Don't Call Me After Midnight, I'm not going to distribute. I don't need to combine like terms. I don't need to move variables, but I do need to add or subtract. So I'm going to subtract 2x from the left side. And remember, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. And so I'm left with -3y equals -2x plus 9. Okay, and remember in slope-intercept form, it's mx plus b, so that's why I went ahead and put the 2x in the beginning. I do now need to look at multiply over divide. I need to divide by -3 because, again, we're solving for y. When you divide by -3, make sure that you're dividing everything by -3. And what I'm left with is y equals, so -2 divided by -3. A negative divided by a negative is a positive, so 2/3 x, and then 9 divided by -3 is -3. And that is my answer. Okay, if I was looking at this, 2/3 is my slope and -3 is my y-intercept. But it just asks you to solve for the line. Number 2, 4x plus 5y equals 20. Again, I'm starting with Don't Call Me After Midnight. And I'm going to box +5y because that's what I'm trying to get by itself first. There's no distribution. I don't need to combine like terms or move variables, but I do need to add or subtract. So I'm going to go ahead and get that 4x to the other side, so I'm going to subtract it. And I'm left with 5y equals -4x plus 20. My last step to solve for y is going to be to divide by 5, and remember we're dividing everything by 5. And I'm left with y equals -4 over 5x plus 4. Don't forget to box your answer. On this one, okay, -4/5 is my slope and 4 is my y-intercept. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit, and now we're going to take equations that are in point-slope form and then turn them into slope-intercept form. So we want to end up with y equals mx plus b, but now we're going to start with point-slope form. So this is what we're starting with. They're giving us a point and a slope, and we're changing it into slope-intercept. I'm still using Don't Call Me After Midnight. Now I'm going to go through my list. So distribute, okay? A big thing that tells me that I need to distribute is I have those parentheses. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute 2 inside the parentheses. I'm going to rewrite the left side. So y minus 5 equals 2 times x is 2x. And then 2 times 0 is just 0. Okay, and so I'm not going to write it. Okay, I do not need to combine or move any variables, but I do need to add or subtract. So remember, I'm trying to get that y by itself. So I'm going to add 5 to the other side. And what I'm left with is y equals 2x plus 5. Okay, and I didn't multiply or divide, so I'm going to cross that one out. Number 4. I'm going to start this one off by distributing. So I'm going to distribute 1/2 to the inside. Remember, when we distribute that, we multiply. So 1/2 x, and then 1/2 times 2. In your calculator, you can type that in. Okay, and I know that 1/2 times 2 is just 1. I don't need to combine like terms or move any variables, but I will add or subtract. I'm going to add 2, because again, we're solving for y. And I'm left with y equals 1/2 x plus 3. Didn't multiply or divide. All right, flip it over. Okay, now the last 2 questions are a little different than what we started with. It says write each equation and then convert it to slope-intercept form if needed. So it gives us different things, and then from what it gives us, that's how we're going to determine how we solve. So number 5 says a line with a slope of -1/2 and a y-intercept of 3. So in an equation, I know that the slope is my m. And if I have a y-intercept of 3, I know that that is b. So I can go ahead and write this directly into slope-intercept form, because slope-intercept is y equals mx plus b. So just plug it in. Y equals -1/2 x plus 3. Okay, there wasn't any math to do to that one because it gave me all the information that I needed. Number 6, a line that passes through the point 5, -4 and has a slope of 4/5. So again, my slope is my m value. And here it gives me a point. So I'm going to label that as x1, y1, because that's the point that it gave me. So now that I know I have a point and a slope, I'm going to go ahead and use point-slope form. So that is y minus y1 equals my slope times x minus x1. And again, that formula is on the front of the notes. I just wrote it back here so you don't have to flip. So I'm going to go ahead and now plug in. Okay, I have my y1, which I will plug in there. My x1, which will go here. And then lastly, my slope. So I'm just plugging all of these in. Okay, so y minus -4. When you're subtracting a negative, okay, I can turn that into addition. My slope is 4/5, and that's going to be x minus 5 on the inside. Okay, now that I have it in point-slope form, I'm going to go ahead and set up don't call me after midnight. Starting with distribution, because I see those parentheses. And that becomes 4/5 x minus 4. Okay, and again, you can type in 4/5, so 4/5 times -5. Okay, and you'll get -4. And then bring down the left side. I don't need to combine like terms, okay? I don't need to move variables, but I do need to add or subtract. So I'm going to subtract 4 so that I have y by itself. And I get y equals 4/5 x minus 8. Cross it out, multiply, divide, because I didn't have to. Okay, if you have any questions about the notes, make sure that you watch them over again or that you go into tutorials with your teacher.